This week, Hanukkah is right around the corner, so why not indulge in the now classic Jewish tradition of complaining about how over-commercialized and poorly commercialized the holiday is. There's a lot to cover on the subject with my guest for this episode, Izzy Wellman, so let's get kvetching. I'm Lev Gringaus, and welcome to The Jews Are Tired, your podcast about Jewish news. Before jumping in, if you like this podcast or Jewfolk generally and the work that we do, support us by buying our merch. A link to our Teespring store is available in the podcast notes, as well as just a link to donate if you want to give directly. We appreciate any support you can give. So, this was an extra fun episode to record because who doesn't love ugh-ing and oi-ing at the State of Hannukah in the United States as a less interesting, less colorful, poorly marketed, and extra tacky Christmas. There are countless examples of bizarre and boring products being marketed to Jews around this time of year. And it's kind of weird because Hanukkah in the grand scheme of Jewish importance means very, very little. It's a nice time to light some candles, give some presents, and feel pretty much no actual Jewish responsibility, or as some of us like to call it, guilt. Like, yeah, the Maccabees fought the Syrian Greeks 2,000 years ago. They fought for their Jewish religious freedom from Greek oppression, and we're just gonna, try and skate past the fact that the Maccabees also killed a ton of more assimilated Jews, and then later became Hellenized Greek-style rulers of Judea anyway. But that's okay. Candles are nice. Don't think too hard about it. But in some sense, Hanukkah's broad visibility in the United States also speaks to the home that Jews have been able to find in this country, relatively safer and more tolerant than many other parts of the world that we have lived in. So that's pretty significant. So the Festival of Lights has a lot going on for a holiday that, again, isn't really supposed to mean a whole lot at all. And as I and other TC Jewfolk staff commiserated about this in group chats, I thought it'd be interesting and fun to bring Izzy Wellman, TC Jewfolk's social media and marketing strategist, on the show to chat about all of this. And to back up a moment, if you're unsure why we're so critical of Hanukkah, here's the first glorious paragraph of an Atlantic article from 2015 by Emma Green about how Hanukkah became so commercialized. I think it sums up the basis of where we're starting from. Quote, "As far as holidays go, Hanukkah sucks. Contrary to the popular public school kid myth, 8 days of presents doesn't mean the holiday is super Christmas. It means the presents are junk, a proliferation of crap. Dreidel is a terrible game that requires no strategy and practically no skill. Somehow the world's entire gelt supply seems to have been manufactured in 1993, so even if you do win, your reward is stale, filmy white, subpar chocolate. Worst of all, Jews are forever manufacturing kitschy alternatives to Christmas customs. What's with the Hanukkah bear anyways? Arguably, latkes are the one merit of the Festival of Lights, but woe to the holiday that relies upon potatoes as its only defense." End quote. So let's get to it. This conversation has been edited for length and clarity. Enjoy. Izzy, you have some, shall we say, strong critical feelings about Hanukkah.
That is what we could say.
So what to you is the number one thing wrong with the holiday?
Honestly, I think of all the things that could be wrong with the holiday, I think my least favorite thing is the attempt at Hanukkah merchandising that stores do, because some of them are actually kind of cute and I could see that being in my home. But then other things have nothing to do with the holiday. It's the wrong holiday that it highlights. Stuff is spelled wrong, on all of the pictures, it's the wrong menorah. So, one of the things I was doing today is I was looking up clip art graphics for some of our client stuff. And it was 7-point menorahs. And I was that has nothing to do with this holiday. But, all the gnomes that have been popping up everywhere. So I think just the attempts at merchandising that some stores do is just it goes a little too far. Like, I appreciate some of it because it's nice to feel included for once, but most of the time it's just so bad that it's funny.
Where was your sort of moment of awakening with this? How did you come to the realization that like, maybe this is a little bit too much?
So I have always kind of been a Grinch when it comes to Christmas, mostly out of like a pure like jealousy sort of thing. Cause it's like everyone gets this cool, awesome holiday that I have no emotional attachment to. Everything about it drives me nuts. And it's like, because Christmas culture in the United States is very exclusionary to people who do not celebrate, because everyone just assumes you do. And if you don't, then it's like, well, why not? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, you don't like Christmas? You don't like the spirit of joy and giving? When it's like, no, people are just different and don't all do that. So I've always kind of been this way. I'm not just, December in general is just, it's dark, it's cold, it's kind of depressing. It starts snowing in December in Minnesota, so I don't like that either. But in the last couple of years, it's just gotten like a lot worse, to the point where I'll be sitting in the car with my boyfriend and he'll ask me one question about the holidays and I'll go on a 20-minute rant about why I hate Hanukkah and Christmas. And he's like, that is not what I asked you. So it has been ongoing for a couple years now, my Grinchiness.
I also think we should take a moment of appreciation for everyone who lives in Minnesota who absolutely despises the cold, dark, wet, gloomy, gray awfulness. I could just go on forever. It drives me nuts.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Let's ask kind of a broad question. What do you think went wrong here? How did we get to this weird point that a Jewish holiday is sort of celebrated-ish and recognized so widely in the US, but not necessarily in a way that's meaningful to a lot of us?
Yeah, so that was what I did most of my research on when I was preparing to come onto the podcast, because I was genuinely curious, like how Hanukkah kind of came to be this cultural phenom that we know it is. And a lot of it had to do with, or a lot of what I found had to do with kind of the assimilation movement of Jews in the early 1900s to like the 1960s or 70s. At this time, a lot of Jews had very negative experiences with Christmas in particular because of pogroms and, Christians using it as a time of year to attack Jews and other minorities. So when Jews began emigrating to the United States, and once, and they saw Christmas culture, they were like, oh, well, how can we do something similar so our kids don't feel left out? And, how can we make ourselves known for this holiday? And what can we use to make kids want to come to synagogue and, want to be Jewish and connect with their Jewish heritage? And Hanukkah became that channel to do it, mostly because of how closely it correlates to Christmas. And pretty much everything I found was like, no, yeah, that's the biggest reason why everyone just blows it up, is because it's a Christmas time holiday. So in like all of the reading I read, it covered how Christmas has kind of materialized this American Jewish Hanukkah tradition, because other Jewish communities across the world don't celebrate Hanukkah the way Jews in America celebrate Hanukkah. One of the things I found is, I found a Vox article about like the history of Hanukkah, and it was like, why did Hanukkah become such a big deal for contemporary Jews? You likely know the answer to this one already: Christmas. So, and there was a study that was actually done in 2010 by Oren Rigby, Ran Abramitsky, and Liron Einav. They did this study at Stanford University, and they basically looked at how American Jews approach Hanukkah and the importance of it. And they basically found that, it varies from Jew to Jew, but a lot of it has to do with Hanukkah being so close to Christmas that they kind of get lumped sum together. And Reform Jews actually have a much different interpretation of, Hanukkah celebrations than conservative and Orthodox Jews in that order, with Reform Jews being more likely to celebrate in like large, gaudy and ways and participate in the consumerism behind it, whereas conservative Jews are less likely and Orthodox Jews are the least likely to participate in that sort of celebrating. So it was very interesting getting to do all this reading and learn like, oh, so it is really like assimilation's fault. And if we could just let people live and be themselves, then we wouldn't have this issue. But of course we can't have that, because we can't have nice things.
So I guess here's another interesting way to poke at it. To ask a common question that Jews tend to ask a lot: is this good or bad for the Jews? Because, like, on one hand, the commercialization aspect is like really annoying to a lot of us. On the other hand, for a Jewish engagement aspect, it's a lot easier to like engage Jews who may be scared of like religious Judaism with a holiday like Hanukkah, where there's not that much kind of baggage and stuff going on. So it seems like this interesting, and for Jews who wanted to be accepted across, you know, so many different places and so many different times, it's like kind of nice maybe that we get to be accepted at this point in America. So good or bad for the Jews? Where do you land on this?
So I'm kind of in the middle. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for the Jews. While I wish they would have chosen literally any other holiday to do this with, I don't think it's a bad thing for the Jews. It's nice to have some recognition and some appreciation for our culture. On the other hand, it's, you know, a holiday that really doesn't have that much meaning to Jewish individuals aside from what we've created it to be, you know, of this coming together of family and getting the presents and everything. And that's, a lot of that is just from influence from Christmas, but it is a nice time for people to get together and hang out with their families. So it kind of goes both ways, where it's like, it's great that we're getting like some sort of respect, but on the other hand, it's like we get like an end cap at a Target and nothing else for the rest of the year, despite this being like such a minor holiday. And that, I think, is one of the biggest reasons why Hanukkah drives me nuts, is because in my head, I'm like, why don't we celebrate anything else on a public scale? Like Rosh Hashanah, cool, love it. You know, Happy New Year, love it. Yom Kippur, very meaningful, fasting, reflecting on what you've done over the past year, setting yourself up for the next year. Passover, celebrating the triumph of our people and blah, blah, blah. And Hanukkah is just like, we needed something. Like, here are the stories of these guys who did this thing thousands of years ago, and we're going to hoist them up and be like, wow, look at them. Because it happened around Christmas, even though we don't even know if that's true. They were just like, we'll throw that in there.
But the other question is, like, I think an Atlantic article I read also kind of had that point of like, well, why not other holidays? How commercialized can some other holidays be? Like, what would we sell for Yom Kippur, you know?
Yes, exactly. I think I read that same Atlantic article while I was doing my research.
Yeah, but so it's like kind of an interesting concept of like, if we could take any other Jewish holiday and turn it into the commercial sort of powerhouse that Hanukkah is, which one would it be and why?
So in my personal opinion, I think Passover is the perfect holiday for that, because it has like the seriousness aspect and the, you know, the big story behind it, kind of like what Hanukkah has. But it also has a lot of avenues where you can like takes and a lot of traditions that you can take and like commercialize if you really wanted to. So there's the Seder plate, there's the 10 plagues, there's the 4 questions there. You know, I know we've both seen, for those of you who have not, there's I think a shower curtain or something that's being sold, or a pillow that says, why are these nights different from all other nights? And it's like, that would be great as a Passover pillow, not for Hanukkah, because this is not the holiday where we ask that question. So it just, part of it is more representation for Jews in these meetings. Like, okay, what do people actually want to see for their Hanukkah decorations? And part of it is also, you know, Passover is my favorite holiday. If you couldn't tell, I'm a very big Passover fan and not a huge Hanukkah fan. So I think if we shifted all of the love that Hanukkah gets and put it on Passover, I would certainly appreciate that move. And it's perfect because it's right near Easter, which is another huge Christian holiday. So, you know, the Christians can feel like they can compare it to something, because that's what they did with Hanukkah and Christmas anyway. And that's why people have to get online every year and be like, no, Hanukkah is not Jewish Christmas. The only similarity is we get gifts. That's it.
It's nice that you brought up the pillow example, because that especially would work for Passover, when we're supposed to lean on one side like kings and queens and royalty. To
Exactly.
Like perfect pillow marketing. I gotta say, like, doing this kind of episode is really nice, because normally I have to read like 500,000 things to get enough in my brain to write one single episode. And now I can just kind of like ask you about all the research you've done. So like, what's another like really interesting factoid or piece of information that as you were looking into this, you went, huh, that's kind of interesting?
Yeah, so there were a bunch of things that I came across in this Atlantic article, and the title of the article is a little confusing. So I ended up pulling like the most like quotes for reference from this article, and it's called Hanukkah Why, and it focuses on the commercialization of the holiday. And I was actually very intrigued because one of the sources that Emma Green, the journalist, had interviewed was a professor at Rowan University, which is my alma mater. So I just thought that was really funny. I was reading it this morning. I was like, oh my God, I know that place. That's where I went to school. So one of the things that Diane Ashton, who is the historian that worked at Rowan University that was involved in this article, basically said was Hanukkah's strongest American advocates seem to be those who felt the complexities of American Jewish life most acutely. So a lot of people who celebrate Hanukkah, Hanukkah is their only way to be in touch with their Judaism. A lot of people, for a lot of, not modernized American Jews, but, secular American Jews, a lot of them attach onto Hanukkah because that's, the one thing that they don't have to celebrate in the context of their family. Enough people know what it is that they can celebrate it with other people. Another thing that I thought was interesting that I found, and I just really liked the phrasing of this, was in the same article, Jenna Weissman Joselit, who is a professor at George Washington University, compared Hanukkah and Christmas as, and in the statement, she said, that's the cheap and dirty way of looking at it, that Hanukkah is penis envy and that Jews need to have their own equivalent of Christmas. And I couldn't agree with that more. I think that's honestly, personally, for me, that's what it boils down to, is it's this need to have something that is comparative with the Christian community, but we don't really need that. And, it's a bad way of looking at it, and it's a cheap and dirty way of looking at it, but it kind of makes the most sense. The funniest thing that I found was at the end of this Atlantic article, the author goes to say, and besides, griping about Hanukkah is a tradition of its own. Every year, Jews fetch about commercialism, saying how distasteful it is or that it is completely distorting what this holiday is about, Ashton said. People have been saying that for more than 100 years. So I felt very, I finished that and I was like, that's a great way to end this article. And it was very interesting to find, that and everything I looked up was just how Christmas affects everything else around it in the month of December. So really my gripes are with Christmas, not with Hanukkah, because, the fundamentals of it, the connectedness with your family, all for it. Love being able to hang out and spend time with my family. The whole commercialization of it and being used as that token of representation, not fun. And I think that's, it's nice to know that a lot of Jews also feel that way. They're not as much of a fan of how the holiday is commercialized.
Yeah, I love that line about penis envy, and it's definitely going to earn this episode an explicit rating.
Yay!
I always love when that happens. So the Christmas thing is really interesting. I've got a question about that in a little bit. But first, do you think we'd be complaining about this as much if the commercialization of Hanukkah was better? The marketing in most products are either bad or bland. And I also wonder if it's even possible to break free of that, because Hanukkah is kind of a really basic holiday. I found an academic article looking at Hanukkah in the late 1800s and early 1900s through the lens of what secular newspapers are writing at that time. And you've got stuff like a 1909 Seattle Star article stating that, quote, light is the predominating feature of the festival of Hanukkah. That's not a lot to work with.
Yeah, I think, honestly, if you got a bunch of Jews in a room and you're how can we effectively market a Hanukkah campaign? I think they would be able to do it in a way that was tasteful to Jews and made it understood by people who weren't, in on the holiday. And not to say that, there aren't plenty of good Christian marketers out there, but if you're not on the inside, you don't really know all the fun stuff. And it's like that with every community. I don't know anything about Kwanzaa aside from what I see on TV. And there are probably people who celebrate Kwanzaa that are actually, no, there's a lot more to it than what is discussed. So again, my big issue is with Christmas, but I think if there was a way to market it where it was focusing on the family aspects and focusing on, not on the gifts and the decorations and the kitschy pillows and the, whatever. I think if it focused more on the feeling of family and gave you tools to, have a great Hanukkah party that weren't really stupid looking plates that say something that has nothing to do with the holiday of Hanukkah. And just stuff like that. And, as great as, nice little mugs that say dreidel, dreidel, dreidel are not that great. I'm not going to use that outside of the 1 week that Hanukkah is. If there was something that, or, all of the stuff with menorahs, the whole not right number of candlesticks on the menorah thing makes me laugh. It makes me laugh so hard, but it's also like, this was the simplest thing you could have done. The simplest thing. There's 8 nights. Why would we have a menorah with 7 candles? How does that make sense? And they both come up when you look up menorah, because the Hanukkah is, slangily referred to as a menorah, because that's what it is. It's just, I really think that if anyone in the Jewish community actually was able to put more time and effort into it and be like, this is how you effectively run a Hanukkah campaign, it would be great. And, they could do it for every major or Jewish holiday. And I would give them all my money and be like, I'm not buying from anyone else again, because they get it.
I also love how you said that, you have to be on the inside to know all the fun stuff. Backing up a moment, I don't know that it's always fun, but I appreciate that you put it that way.
Oh, I mean, granted, talking about the slaughtering of Jewish people and the closed offness that we've also often had to face in relation to our religion is definitely not what I would consider fun, but it's all the, background stuff. So, all of the information about the Maccabees and who they were and what they're referred to as, and, all the stuff with the temple and how, what the deal is with the temple and why it was so important and what all of this meant to, Jewish people then and what it means to us now and how that translates. Kind of gets lost when you haven't grown up hearing stories about the temple and hearing the story of Hanukkah every year since you were 3 years old or earlier. So that kind of gets lost on people, and then they take it for what it is at face value, and then they hear all these common, Jewish sayings, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that works. We can market that. We can sell that. People will buy it," kind of thing. So I feel it's not always fun. Fun is not the right word, but you don't get all the good stuff until you're on the inside.
Just to pile on to sort of the marketing aspect of what does come up, especially the kitschy side. Just want to throw this quote your way to see how you maybe react to it. From an Alma piece in 2017, quote, "Christmas has tacky, but it also has traditional. It has modern. It has quirky. Our only options are tacky or straight up old world Judaica."
Absolutely 100%. And that is, I think, one of the other gripes that I have is not only is it marketed poorly, but we have so few marketing options that there's no fun interpretive ways to celebrate Hanukkah that isn't super, super old school, right out of the shtetl, or, super kitschy Target brand. So, and, I remember last year specifically, I was doing I'm super into makeup. That was one of the things I got into during quarantine. And I was like, I want to do nice eye makeup for Hanukkah. So I looked it up and everything was just blue and white Jewish stars, on your face, had nothing to do with the holiday. I literally could not find anything. And I was like, I have no idea what to do. I ended up doing some orange and yellow thing and it looked really cute, but it took me a while to figure out what to even do, because it was there's no way for me to celebrate this that isn't painted blue, white, and gold and has a giant Jewish star on my face. One of the things, I said, I was looking up these clip arts before, and a lot of they have little people celebrating Hanukkah, and they have the menorah in one hand and they have a Jewish star on their shirt. And it's could we not tell that they were Jewish without the Jewish star? That, it was the kind of thing that made me tilt my head a little bit. And, all of the boys have yarmulkes on. You didn't need to include that. Plenty of Jewish men don't wear yarmulkes. They could also just be celebrating Hanukkah. You don't know the kind of people that just celebrate Christmas. Everyone celebrates Christmas. Everyone could celebrate Hanukkah too, in theory. And not all people that celebrate Hanukkah have to wear Hanukkah or kippah and hold a Hanukkah and have a Jewish star on their shirt.
But otherwise, how do you know they're Jewish?
Exactly. God forbid we don't know that they're Jewish.
So this is going to be another kind of meaty thing to throw your way, especially on the your gripe being with Christmas more so with Hanukkah. This is kind of an interesting stab at that. But just to come back to that of Hanukkah as penis envy for Christmas, part of me goes, yeah, that makes sense. But another part of me is wait a second. So much of what Christmas is in America was made by Jews, from the classic movies, the songs, the imagery, the marketing, we're not to be anti-Semitic, but we're a little bit, everywhere. So we've had a hand in creating this thing, and it kind of makes me think should we in some sense maybe, hear me out, give up on Hanukkah being this big thing and instead kind of learn to celebrate Christmas? Not in the birth of Christ way, but we've done so much for this holiday on a cultural level that don't we have a right to enjoy our work and celebrate it?
Yes. So I think that Jewish celebrations of Christmas are some of my favorite celebrations of Christmas because they totally ignore the whole Jesus part of it, which is the part that I feel the most alienated from. And they totally focus on everything else. I know my boyfriend's family, I love this tradition that they do. I look forward to it every year. They invite all their friends over on Christmas Day. We eat Chinese food and we watch movies based on Jewish, that there's a Jewish actor, there's a Jewish director, and then we just watch those movies all day. And it brings me joy because I'm not focused on, Christmas and, scrolling through my Instagram, seeing everyone with their Christmas trees and with their presents and their heaps of presents. I'm focused more on spending time with my boyfriend and his family, who I adore very much, watching movies and eating Chinese food, which feels very culturally Jewish to me, because who doesn't love eating Chinese food on Christmas? It's like the tradition. So I think, and I do agree that I think Jews should, be able to benefit for a lot of the labor that they put into Christmas, especially because a lot of Jews are the people that wrote Christmas, the traditional Christmas carols and stuff like that. And I think I like looking back on it because in a way, in the context of, we didn't have an option to do stuff for ourselves, so we had to do it for other people. And I agree. Jews have put in a lot of time and effort and have made a lot of money off of the idea of Christmas, which good for them, like, go you. But also, as much as someone I would want to be able to embrace Christmas, at its core, it's about Jesus. And it's hard for, at least for me personally, a lot of people can argue this with me about being able to separate the two and how, consumer Christmas is much different than Christian Christmas. But for me, it's the same. Like, Christ is literally in the name. I can't separate Jesus from the holiday itself. It's the birthday of Jesus is what it has become to everyone. That's how everyone celebrates it. And how it's been known for so many years. It's really hard to take that whole Christian aspect out of the Christian holiday. So I think as much as I support Jews celebrating Christmas in their own right. And, I do have a lot of Jewish friends who also celebrate Christmas, and there are several interfaith families who celebrate both, and all of those are valid. I just personally don't think that it's something I would be able to do because I can't get Jesus out of it.
No, that's a really good point. It's like, no matter what way you look at it, we're kind of stuck in between, like, we're rocking a hard place for both Hanukkah and Christmas in terms of like all of this stuff. So to kind of wrap on some more positive, maybe, and uplifting-ish questions, because, Jews, we're good at getting into deep, dark stuff. First of all, when we're looking, you mentioned this a little bit before, but when you're looking at Hanukkah, what would you say are like the number one positive and actually Jewish things that we should be taking away from the holiday?
Yes. So I love the fact that it centers around lighting the candles. Like, the gifts are great. The latkes are amazing. I love latkes. I'm going to be very controversial. I think the box latkes are the best kind of latkes, like box mix. I don't care about homemade. If it comes from the box, it tastes better. Last year we tested
Wild.
it, and I know I'm like probably one of the only people that thinks that, and I am totally okay with that. That's my unpopular opinion. No nuance November. Box latkes are better than homemade latkes. But, all of that is great. But the idea of coming together as a family, lighting these candles, thanking God or whoever you pray to for being in this moment, being able to celebrate this holiday without fear of without too much fear of persecution, because you're never safe. Not to sound,
this was supposed to be uplifting. This was supposed to be positive. Jews, damn it.
Listen, it's really hard. It's really deeply ingrained in our cultures to be a little bit scared all the time. But, to be able to stand with your family and, be able to celebrate this feat that we were able to overcome adversity and now still be able to stand and tell a tale and light these Hanukkah candles now, thousands of years later, is really nice. And I like anything for me that focuses on the idea, the family construct, because I think that's such a key part of a lot of Jewish principles and values. Anything that focuses on family for me is something that I immediately am drawn to. So I really like lighting the candles. I'm really excited. We just got a menorah this year for our apartment. So it's going to be my first time lighting candles like in an apartment. And we were like trying to decide where the menorah should go, like which windowsill it should go in. So we're very excited for it. And, you know, despite my gripes with Hanukkah, I like being able to look at the candles. They all look so pretty, especially on the 8th night when they're all there. It's awesome. So I think that's my favorite part about Hanukkah, is being able to be with my family and celebrate, you know, our existence.
So the last question I have for you is, now that you haven't already thrown out some controversial hot takes, how do you prefer to spell Hanukkah, and what's the absolute most ungodly way to spell it, according to you?
Okay, there has to be an H at the end. I understand why, you know, the H is optional. Has to be an H at the end. I don't care about the N's or the K's. I usually do 2 N's and 1 K, or 1 N and 2 K's in the middle. But it can't be both. Both is too much. We have like a whiteboard calendar in our apartment, and I was like decorating it for Hanukkah to be annoying because Hanukkah starts in November this year. And I just wrote Hanukkah as like poorly as it was like CHANNUKKAH. Like the longest way that I could think of like spelling it out. Like that is atrocious. I also think starting it with a CH and ending it with just an A, like CHANUKA, is a really bad one. I don't know what it is. It just does not look right to me. My go-to spelling is HANUKKAH. That is usually what I do, you know, when it comes to like work stuff and everything like that, and like my most common spelling variation of it. So.
This has been this week's The Jews Are Tired podcast. I'm Lev Gringaus. Don't forget to subscribe and share, and hopefully next week, the Jews will get some rest. The Jews Are Tired is a product of Jewfolk Inc. For more information, go to tcjewfolk.com or email the show at podcast@tcjewfolk.com. A link to the transcript of this episode is available in the podcast notes, along with links to any news stories or reports referenced for this episode.